Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos. I'm a sociologist at John Jay College here in New York City. Our reasons for this show are to offer alternative narratives of what can be and how to bring about a better world. Our audience are the ones that appear on the show, support it, and carry on the progressive traditions that we try to bring you every week. This week we look at the connection between art, performance, drama, protest, and social change. On September 12th, people of faith and moral courage will gather at state capitals in 25 states to deliver the Higher Ground Moral Declaration, which calls on government, senators, state legislatures, and candidates for office to move away from extremist politics and policies that benefit the few and move toward policies and laws that are just and fair and guarantee a better life for the majority of people. I've invited Reverend Emily McNeil, the acting director of the New York Labor Religion Coalition, to tell us more about this important event and movement and how we can join in and support its efforts. Welcome, Emily, to the Radical Imagination. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Terrific. Emily, so tell us about this incredibly important, profound event that will be happening on September 12th. Reverend Barber, so many other people from around the country, moral leaders, politicians, students, activists from all over going to be gathering on state capitals. Tell us how this got started. What are you trying to accomplish? Tell us how we can participate in all this.
Great, yes. So what's happening on September 12th is one action in a whole growing movement that's happening all over the country. Reverend Barber has become one of those notable spokespeople for this movement down there. And I think what's really remarkable about the Moral Mondays movement in North Carolina is how it's been able to bring together a very significant cross-section of North Carolinians crossing lines of race and class and even party affiliation to bring folks together around a common agenda. And important to that is the idea that this agenda is rooted in values. So for many of us, that's moral values. Some of us, it's tied to our faith traditions. But also we want to lift up the values that represent the best ideals of our country and of what we hope democracy could be. So the whole idea that the Moral Mondays movement had was to frame things not, as Reverend Barber says, not about left or right, but about
right and wrong.
About the values that we hold. So coming out of the success and the attention that the Moral Mondays movement got in North Carolina, Reverend Barber and other leaders, including Reverend James Forbes from New York City, Sister Simone Campbell, Reverend Tracy Blackman, and others have been leading revivals around the country. And so this is bringing together local clergy, local activists to do a kind of revival religious service, as well as doing trainings in how to organize and how to build a statewide, state-led movement that lifts up these issues in a moral way.
So this is
the September 12th day of, go ahead.
No, I was just, again, this is non-denominational. I want to make that very clear. You're talking about values that certainly secular people can support. So we're not talking about any particular denomination here, right? Correct?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and I think it's important, and it's been really successful in the way that it's happened, in that it's bringing together people of all different faiths and denominations, but also recognizing that these values aren't unique to faiths. Values like the dignity of every person, the right of every person to have their basic needs met. But that is also found in the values of our Constitution, which put protection of the general welfare, right as one of the foremost values that we lift up. So it's really identifying the common ground that, in terms of values, that spans people of all faiths and of no particular faith.
So this is a movement that will continue on. You're also, as I understand, planning on a Poor People's Campaign in 2017. Is this going to be an extension, continuation of the struggle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So September 12th is happening, as you mentioned, in, I think, actually more than 25 state capitals, and many of the states, including New York, where it's happening. There has been some kind of organizing in this vein already. So we participated in Moral Monday actions at the New York State Capitol over the past couple of years, kind of bringing together a similar coalition of groups and labor groups and community groups to lift up a broader agenda. And the same is true in many of the other states that will have these events on the 12th. And the idea is that this is part of a larger movement that's going to. So as you mentioned, Labor Religion Coalition is also an endorser of the Poor People's Campaign, which has a number of organizations signed on, including Repairers of the Breach, which is Reverend Barber's organization.
Right.
And the Poor People's Campaign is looking at continuing to do these kind of revivals or events that really lift up kind of the moral and cultural framework of stuff that incorporates arts and culture, incorporates spirituality, and puts forward really kind of is a space for truth telling about what's happening in our country right now. That lifts up how people are organizing and responding in really courageous and inspiring ways, and kind of brings us together around a framework that gets beyond what any of our political parties are currently offering.
Right. Listen, terrific. It sounds just absolutely terrific. I will be up there with you on Monday. We've had a number of representatives from the movement on this show. Larry Cox, for one, Liz Theoharis, and we certainly, Willie Baptiste, and we certainly hope that Reverend Barber, and expect him to be on as well. So Emily, thank you so very, very much. We'll see you Monday. We will have you on and other members of the movement continuously on this show at different times. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you very soon this coming Monday.
Great, looking forward to it.
Terrific. Well, these are, we now have two terrific guests that I've also invited who are literally terrific actresses, actors, instructors who I admire. I've seen Margot a few times in different plays, and I wanted to try to get us to talk about the drama of protest at a collective level at first, through mass movements, and then introduce the issues that you've had as individual performers and actors in your own individual attempts to portray different characters to different audiences and so on. Is there some similarities that you've noticed as you listen to Emily talk here? And we'll start with you, Margot, and then we'll get to Jan in just a minute.
Mm-hmm. First of all, thank you very much for having me here.
Yes, thank you.
I think if you look back in history and you look at drama and you see why plays and theater was originally created, it was basically to address social issues. And you look at the heart of the Greek theater, and a lot of it had to do with raising issues that were problematic at the time, or that were serious social concerns, and presenting them in a way to the public. as a way of airing them and addressing them and hopefully having something done. So I think there is a strong tie with social protest and with theater. And I hope this isn't, too much of a stretch, and you can.
Not at all.
Well, no, I don't think it is at all.
And I think that I think by the very public nature of protest, it is a sort of theater, and you are hoping to create an audience that is going to be attentive and is going to listen and respond in the way that you want, in the same way that when you go to the theater and I think about Shakespeare's Globe, and the people were really encouraged to be part of the spectacle. And that's what you want from protest, whether you're talking back in the 60s, you didn't want it happening in a vacuum. You wanted to get a group of people, you wanted publicity, you wanted people, the general public, to know what was going on. So I think that protest does have its origins in drama. And I think that you also get people who are at the heads of these protests who are naturally theatrical. I mean, you look at Al Sharpton, you look at a lot of people, and they saw themselves as, see themselves as orators, as presenters, as people who like to be identified in the public eye.
So above all else, it's a public event.
It's a public event.
It's a shared collective event.
Exactly.
Emotions and ideas and thoughts. And Jan Douglas, you've been an instructor for many years at Lee Strasberg, musical theater, voice. You also see that at your institution in your work?
Well,
social conscience?
My field is the singing aspect of that, and how the singing voice is used to train the speaking voice. So coming from a singing has always been used to teach. Whether camp songs, church songs, historically, the church used hymns to teach scripture and theology. So it moves people in a similar direction.
In a way, before words or written words, certainly. It's just such a basic...
that root
basic
sense of expression, but also it empowers text to set it to tune. And then it also memorizes much more easily.
How did you get started in this?
I like to sing.
You just like to sing. Now, where did you start singing?
I think we all started in church.
In church. I was
along with all
that.
the rest of the southern
Well, Margot
children.
may be in synagogue, right? No.
I mean, actually, I grew up. I was singing in elementary school. I went to a school that was actually, it was a public school, and it was run by the Protestant school board, and the majority of the students were Jewish. And yet we sang everything. I was one of the few friends of a group that knew all the words to every single Christmas carol. And I was called upon to every Christmas to accompany everybody. So I think that I started really in school singing.
So, and you too, Jan?
Well, the Christmas carols.
The Christmas carols.
All written by Jewish composers. So,
right. Irving
anyway.
Berlin. And all that
Absolutely.
Stuff,
My accompanist down at the school, Paul Chamlin, he put something up. He said, "Oh, another carol written by a Jew." Said,
well, that's a whole other. Well, where does that come from? That's interesting in itself, right?
Yeah, but the idea of thematic utilization of text to carry the message and to move a people in a particular direction is historic.
And to want to feel part of something, to join, to get people to join and celebrate in this case. Right?
And we were talking earlier, before we started, about Pete Seeger and the Weavers. And that's how my parents listened to that all the time.
That's the protest song right there.
We shall overcome.
We shall overcome.
Right.
And the one, about the ticky-tack and the boxes, how we're all living in these
condos.
living in these boxes, not condos.
That's Tom Paxson. Condos for sale. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But all those were protest songs, and it all, so it wasn't just speaking; it was the language of protest was music.
Even out of the Depression, brother,
Yeah.
can you spare a
Spare
dime?
a dime, absolutely.
Tremendous statement, just heartrending to listen to it, and to know the condition, human condition at that point because of financial situations.
The Negro spirituals,
Yeah.
Yeah,
identification with
which had
slavery,
at a
too.
level was a
Jewish
protest
slavery.
song.
Incredible. Yeah. So now you've brought this up. You bring all this wonderful experience to Lee Strasberg. You bring it to the stage, movies and TV. Is that what keeps you guys going in this? Is it something that turns you on? Is it something that makes a big difference in your performance at some level? Do you think?
You know, I think
Motivation?
I think wanting to present a message. You know, I think it varies depending on what the work is. As anyone who's in this profession knows, there's the
Right.
commercial work, and then there's the work that has a much more personal bent to it. And most people, if they hopefully get to do both, then that's great. But I think it's the idea of presenting a story and doing it well and telling it and getting it across and feeling like you are inhabiting, you know, another character and being able to tell that story. And I think in that way there is a similarity to protest and to these movements. It's wanting to get across a story, and whether it's a love story or a family story or a story of racial wrongs or civil rights.
Or try to feel what the other is
Yes.
maybe is feeling, and project that onto an audience that you hope will also be moved by it.
Well,
Tricky
that's-
stuff, right?
It is.
It's
It is
hard
tricky.
to do.
It is. It's very hard because it's
You're going
not-
to tell us how that's done,
Well,
right?
no, I'm just going to say it's, you know, you're only a small cog in that huge wheel. You come with your
Yeah.
own talent, and you hope that you're going to be faced with or given material that will tell that story in a way that you feel it ought to be told, which is not always the case. You know, you sometimes
that
have
you want to tell.
the story that you want to tell, and sometimes you're doing things that you don't necessarily want to, but you do for financial reasons or, you know, or other,
Part of
or
the job.
exposure, or
Yeah, and so
So it's a real balancing act, you know, doing what you love. And for me, I do try and do as much theater as I can, because the feeling of being in front of a live audience is quite extraordinary. And it's feeling like you can have the audience in your hand and you can move them, and not, I was going to say manipulate them, but you have that power in a way that you don't necessarily have in film or television. And it's also being able to redo it every night if you're in an extended run. You can, every night is different because your audience is different and how you feel that night is different. And it's a living, breathing thing, and it's quite
important to move people for you.
It's important to, yes, it's important. It's always important to move people, because if you're,
Why?
well, because there's no other reason. Otherwise, you could just be sitting in front of your mirror. If you're not going to affect people, then there's no reason to be there. That's the whole point, whether it's to make them laugh or feel sad, or you just want them to feel something. You want them to be moved by what you're doing. And
Or to feel what you feel.
right, and hopefully you feel moved, which will then.
But that is the obligation. You take that on as part of a contract.
Yeah.
Is that I will allow you in as a performer, and no barriers.
Right.
And this is how I feel about this. And that's
So you're going to let the audience in, and at the same time, you're going to let the audience into you or into the character.
yeah. Works
Wow.
both ways there.
Yeah.
But I mean, any acting approach tries to find a way to let go, to take the barriers down. And you know when the barriers are up with a performer, because you can't get through. You don't feel.
It feels
anything.
false.
But when it's open, it's wonderful both ways.
So you work with performers to try to break through. Tell us.
Yeah,
How do you do that?
guide and offer the possibility, present the possibility that the barriers could be down and that they would be better for that because of the resistance and the stress and armoring up of an individual. I mean, it works, it's not just on stage, but in life.
They've got to
Is how do
really
we
trust you,
relate?
right? Got to be an
Trust.
enormous trust.
Right.
How do you
And
gain
so
that
a class
trust?
runs just almost like a therapy. There has to be trust between the teacher and the students, and the students with each other. A willingness to take chances and not feel that they will be ridiculed or looked down upon for doing that. So
It could be tough stuff,
that's
right?
tough. Yeah, it's tough because everybody comes in with their own baggage and reasons to, and having maybe obscured for years themselves from themselves and from others. So you are trying to offer an opportunity to let go of some of that, to open up and see where you can go from there.
And the resistance can be
Yeah.
tough to overcome. But presumably, people are there to want to do that to a certain extent. right? I mean,
Theoretically.
theoretically. But
Yes, they are there to do just
Theoretically.
that. But when it comes down
it's
to
to
it,
it. And they
What,
may
what
not-
you
yeah,
want
go ahead.
and what you can do are often quite far apart.
Yeah,
finding
boy,
the way.
the ego on this stuff. I mean, yeah, what if you just
There's a lot of investment.
can't stretch it to the point where you'd like to? What do you say then? Well, good try.
Well,
or-
as you said, Margot, it's like maybe not manipulation, but direction, offering a direction to move with that,
Yeah.
a way to move through it. Now, an actor will have exercises that will hopefully bring them to a point of that kind of release. Relaxation exercises to, get rid of what you walk in terms of ego, so that you can start at that neutral position with whatever the character needs to bring about. But from a singing point, then there's a whole other skill set there for the singing voice. And we are accustomed to disguising our speaking voices just from life. But the singing voice is less able to be disguised, I would say. So you really have to be comfortable with the expression over a pitch range and quality range.
And you obviously have to have
Before you-
talent too. But
Talent?
that's got to
I
be
never thought about that part. Huh.
right. But you can bring someone to a level that they probably never realized.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
But the talent.
Talent's
some
helpful.
Talent, yeah, it's always helpful.
But I always say no substitute for rehearsal. Practice, man.
Practice. Now you see, okay, I'm just top of my head. I'm Ethel Merman. I've heard did she practice what? She was a belter, right? She's what it's called.
Well,
I mean,
she became that
I mean,
over time.
was she a trained voice? I mean, or what would you do? Let's just put yourself in position. Here's Ethel Merman here. What would you do?
With Ethel Merman, at what stage in her career?
Well,
You see? Because
yeah,
after
but-
a while, even classical singers can become a caricature of their early on habits, and these kind of exaggerate over time.
right.
so they
That's
become
interesting.
A caricature.
Typecast.
Well,
Is that sort of
no, I just
No,
think they
no.
kind of enhance little things along the way that become characteristics of their voice, so that they're
That weren't
see.
necessarily
yeah.
the positive sides of their voice.
Not necessarily positive, but ultimately probably what made their career, those idiosyncrasies. And like a Tom Waits kind of voice, you wouldn't want to change that.
no?
That's Tom Waits. But I wouldn't tell a student to be like Tom Waits in terms of finding that voice, because Tom Waits has already done Tom Waits, or Adele has already done Adele.
That's
There's enough Adele right now.
So sometimes the best thing to do is just let it be.
Find
Let it be.
yourself.
Find yourself. And,
Yeah.
and Margot too. You
It's very interesting because I'm part of this group called the Actors Green Lounge, and one of the things that they talk about is really finding out who you are, your type, and just honing in on that and understanding that that is who you are, and that's what you want to sell to the casting people. Just really having a good definition of who you are. And
what goes on in this group? I mean, how does that come about?
well,
Sounds fascinating.
It is, and it comes about through a variety of different ways. But one of the ways is the director of this group. Her name is Jen Rudolph, and she will meet with you and give you scene work and work with you and try and help you hone in. I think what's happened today is that until you get to a level like a Meryl Streep, where you can do absolutely anything from, Polish chambermaid to Florence Jenkins.
Mamma mia.
People don't have that opportunity anymore. They want you to be you. You're not hired for a massive range. And this is different from how it used to be, and especially in the world of television and film. Theater, there's more leeway. But in terms of television and film, you really have to understand who you are, and you have to present that to the directors and the casting people. And it's very important to understand who you are and what kind of roles you're going to be good for and you will be cast for.
If you feel comfortable, tell us your own journey. What do you feel?
Oftentimes people
with?
will ask me, and very often it's a lawyer.
Really?
Or a doctor, or
Really?
I get the very serious things. In fact, I'm going to be filming something next week, playing an assistant district attorney.
Really?
And I don't get.
So I can see you in that, but not.
But so I don't
not
get this sort of
totally, yeah.
blue collar thing very
No
often.
dinettes.
Yeah. No what?
No dinettes.
No dinettes. No, I'm not.
No table work.
And you just sort of, I think, as I see people and I work with a lot of people, you just can tell that they have a type, and that's what you have to go in for. And I think once you get to be at a certain level, then you can expand your range and say, well, listen, I'm not only doing this, but I'm doing that. But I think that things have become so competitive at this point that you really have to be able to be very sharp and focused on what you are and what you think that you'll do best.
I'm not trying to stir something up here. I mean, I think she's a terrific lawyer, doctor, but what else maybe? What do you think, Jan? What do you,
In terms of
Margot,
type
maybe.
here?
What would you like to see her?
Let's see, out on a
Let
yacht.
it out.
On a
I
yacht.
see this lady
On a yacht.
On
Okay.
a yacht, absolutely.
After she's won her case.
After I've won my
Won
case,
the
then
case.
I'm relaxing, yes.
Relaxing on the yacht.
On a
Okay.
yacht, yeah.
Brand. I mean, when you, is this somewhat what you're talking about, or am I way off base on this? When people talk about establishing a brand, I mean, quite frankly, at first I'm not really sure what the hell that is. But I mean, when people talk about, this is my brand, I mean, I don't know what, Geraldo, that's Geraldo's brand, whatever the hell that is, okay, but I'm going to change my brand. Is that sort of what you're talking about?
I think it is. I think people have to.
Folks find a niche for
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
and build on that.
And become known for that. I think it's I think that's what happens.
Okay.
You need to have a brand. Like we could probably say what your brand is,
You could
But we
try
won't,
that
we
if you
won't,
want, but maybe after the show.
After
No, I'm
the show.
teasing. But you hear a lot about actors, performers, politicians, for Pete's sakes, who don't really have a core, or they don't know who they are. I mean, is that a danger too in all of this? I mean, you flow with the wind here. Oh, I can do this, I can do that, I'll stay this. This audience wants me to take this position. Well, sure, of course not. Yeah, we'll build a wall. Yeah, it'll be a beautiful wall. Maybe 6 feet, maybe 40 feet. What do you guys want? I mean, is that a danger of that too? Or do you have to build on that core? Is that core always there?
Well, you have to find that for yourself.
That's
And
in
you have
anything
to
in
be-
life, I would. Right.
And with a solid look, a serious look, a reality type look that you know what you are, what your best thing is, and hang in there with that, because in the field, in the acting, there's so many agents or people that'll tell you you need to be this, you need to be able to do that. Oh, I hear your voice being much smaller than it is, really, you know, so don't try to overblow here, and then a lot of people get pushed down to zero.
Your
So,
smile, it must make you
inhibited.
crazy, right? I mean, all this,
Yeah,
these
it does.
voices. Yeah.
And you know, to just bring it back to politics, I mean,
Sure.
what the press seems to seize on is any politician being wishy-washy or flip-flopping back and forth. I mean, they want people with a very solid position on the issues, and they don't want them, varying one way or another. They want to know that if you're going to be backing whoever it is, that this is what they're saying. And I can't remember, it was a few years ago, but there was all this talk, and maybe, I don't know whether it was Hillary, whether flip-flopping back and forth. I don't think it was her. But there was, there was a lot of that. So I think I think people crave stability. And I think they want to know that what they're going to get.
Don't they also crave a certain integrity? And that's
yes.
what we were talking about at the march, the demonstration on the 12th. I've come to know Reverend Barber. I know Cornel West, a few other people that I've worked with in my own world. These are people that have that integrity. They're not going to sell it. That doesn't mean that they can't change their viewpoints and this and that. So this flip-flopping versus this integrity, how do you know which is which here? I mean, you want someone to be thoughtful, who's not going to be that rigid, but on the other hand, you want to have somebody that you can really trust and that stands for certain things that are going to be there.
I would trust a change through thought over time. I can see a position might evolve and could turn a big direction over time. But I would like to know that process, occurred through reasoning and an input of facts over time. I wouldn't see a change in direction depending on what group I was talking to at that moment or what time of day it was.
Or what the polls were saying, for example.
So you're real
So,
social scientists there. Go by the facts, the empirical data.
and one of those involves integrity.
Where does emotion come on to it, though? I mean, we're not all these social scientists measuring polls and operating on the facts always, are we? Or?
Well, I think when it comes to politicians, I would say that emotion is not going to play a significant role. Because I think if you have a politician that is just acting and changing quickly on the basis of emotion, that, to me, that seems to indicate a lack of stability and also perhaps a lack of integrity, that they can be so swayed that they didn't have the conviction of their thoughts beforehand, that something could so easily sway them.
And to use the word you used a few minutes ago, manipulation.
Yeah.
We live in a world of manipulation. And now you hesitated to use that word as an actor, but it is manipulation too, right?
I think you can look at
line?
Manipulation a couple of ways. Manipulate has somewhat of a sneaky sense to it.
Yeah, there's a negative.
There's a negative feeling to manipulation. I think what you want is to invoke change through something that is really organic.
Okay.
And that's different from manipulating.
a considered process.
Yeah.
to respect the audience, not to use them for one's
For your own
own
gain, yes,
gain.
exactly.
Yeah, so it gets back to really knowing. It gets back to the ancient Greeks, though, right? Know thyself.
does. I was curious when we were talking about protest or Greeks using a system. Where do we have? We had the musical Hair, which was a protest,
Yes.
and others along the way. But the most recent is Hamilton, a process of protest as it contributed to revolution. So very much with us today.
So that's opening up a very wonderful, interesting connection between the performing arts and creativity and music and drama and so on, and the larger political economic process. What are the connections? Do we need a return to sort of links between music and art and drama and politics and economics as we had perhaps in the 60s for that Woodstock and so on? Do you need these countercultural forces out there to inspire people to push the envelope? How does this all link up, though? I guess is the question.
Or how does it push
How does it, or how
the
should it?
envelope?
Yeah.
Would it?
Would
Could
it?
it? Could a Hamilton change a national
Yeah,
consciousness?
that's a great way of putting it. And certainly there's going to be a counter response to that. I mean, you could argue that we've had a counter response to the 60s for the last 40, 50 years and so on. And now the question becomes, well, where are we going from here? This new generation who may not be aware of a lot of the struggles of the 60s. That Barber, for example, is trying to resurrect. I mean, I asked her a question, Poor People's Movement. I mean, most of our audience, well, it's hard to know, but Poor People's Movement, that was the movement that King was trying to establish right before he was assassinated. Barber is trying to bring about that same situation. Thousands and thousands of poor people around the country would congregate in Washington and do what King wanted to do. I mean, this is performance. I mean, this is an ultimate performance. This guy is not going to back down. This guy, Barber, is and has as the same sort of integrity as a king. So something's going to happen here. He's going to do this, and there's a whole bunch of people that are going to go along with it. And so we're at, boy, talk about high drama. This is like going to be a mini drama.
Well, King was a performer.
Mini-series?
He was an opera singer, as far as that goes.
You know Barber?
No, I'm saying
sorry.
Martin Luther King
was
a world caliber
really
orator, and the way he utilized speech and built a sermon, which these political or whatever, they were sermons,
right,
with the trope, the rhythm, the phrasing of the service. He was a master, and it moved people.
And
So,
in
I
those
don't-
southern white churches that you now,
Of course.
so that moved you to what now? To
Well, it moved a people to action, didn't it?
and
And
you
it eventually turned a nation.
right,
So,
and you as a young southern man, young
white man.
white man, influenced by your love of music and hearing this incredible individual. Did what impact did he have?
His impact on was say, what is going on here? Because of the
For
national
you, individual,
Yeah, because of the national coverage of that, and as an observer, as a young man, just an observer of all of this. I was, of course, not involved in any of it, that being young enough to miss a lot of that. But it changed. I'm not typical Southern.
Oh no, of
But
course.
nonetheless,
No, come
there
on,
was
I'm not doing anything. I think it's fascinating how music again and individuals and charismatic performances can transform individuals as well as a country, as a culture. So the impact that Aretha Franklin, of course, as you know. I mean,
Of course.
trained in gospel music. I mean,
So to take it on up to, say, Hamilton,
Yeah,
there's been
yeah.
national coverage.
right.
They've opened it up to young people, to schools, but, and it'll be on tour. And maybe it will bring about over time as these young minds see that process. We were sitting at a restaurant upstate, and this little 6-year-old was running lyrics from Hamilton to her mom. And I mean, dead on, had the whole thing down. So I'm saying something's
It's
going
got,
on
yeah,
here.
it has
Now,
some power.
have you seen Hamilton?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
No,
Well, I haven't-
clips. You can't
clips.
get in.
Yeah.
However, you can
Even
study
on your
it.
salary.
You can study it on yes, study it online.
Study it on-
YouTube.
Yeah.
You
We
know,
have the album.
lyrics are there.
My
The
kids know it,
album is
yeah.
there.
Your kids know it. Now, your
Yeah.
kids are
13 and 15. My 13-year-old knows all the words.
Okay, now tell us. So this is the generation you're talking about. Now they're impacted by it. What does it say to them? What are they thinking about, you think? What do
You
they
know,
tell you?
I don't
about
know. I
this?
just know that it's a thing. It's a happening, and that
It's a happening.
Yeah, it's a happening.
Remember that
It's a
term?
hip
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
You're
it's
too
a-
young for that. All right.
Okay,
It's a happening. All right, it's a happening.
and and loves the music and just has memorized it and
Man.
performing it at
That's-
school, and it's
Young, open minds.
Yeah.
Absorb.
Which I think I was telling you both. We had Jill Stein on here a few weeks ago, and was her running mate, Baraka. I think it's 45% of young people under 30 are open and wanting to vote for Stein and Johnson. I mean, they get it. They've had it. I know we talked a little about this before.
Well, I mean, I think
They've
they're
had it with
looking-
these older
yeah.
politicians.
I think
their
they're
brand.
looking for an alternative, and I
Yes.
think that's probably how people felt when Obama came
Yeah.
onto the scene in in 2008. It was like, wow, he's young, he's vibrant, he doesn't represent everything else that we had before, and I wish that things were different now. But I think when you look at it, you have to do the lesser of the two evils, and one evil is very evil.
Well, yeah,
Without mentioning any names.
Yeah, we get that. We understand. But you know what? Maybe even more interesting, going back to your analogy of performances. Okay, so Obama, they come in there, the great charismatic leaders, and they
Again, another great speaker.
a great speaker, a great performer. What happens now? Give us some of your insights as
You
as
have to
performers and
have a
actors.
receptive audience.
Okay, he had it.
Well, no, he did
had it. Then
in-
what did he do with it?
He
He
was
had it. They
completely
were ready.
blocked.
Wait, I say who blocked? He blocked.
No, by the Republicans. Anything that he tried to
Okay, well,
do,
No, but he had the country. They were ready to go, to be the progressive voice that he said he was going to be. And then he didn't do it. I'm just trying to, give me some analogy. To an actor performing night after night, it's very difficult to remain at this charismatic level, right? Do you know what I'm trying to get at?
I
Why
understand what
can't-
you're saying.
right,
I think,
Why can't
ultimately he was
continue? What
a
he's-
lawyer and he was a professor. And I think he went back to sort of how he anticipated his classes to be and that milieu. And I think he didn't stay on the same level that he needed during his campaigns. I think he went back thinking that everything would be much more civil and that he wouldn't have to push as hard as he had in his campaign.
So he needed to go to the class you're describing. He
Yes.
needed to listen
needed
Jen,
to
open him up,
figure out his brand. I think
figure out his brand, and not restrain himself as
yes,
much.
He maybe didn't-
I think
you
he
could
did.
say.
Yeah, and I think that
He didn't follow through on his brand.
right. I think that's right. And I think that he was faced with tremendous, even if he had been as charismatic,
He was
in the White House as he had been.
Okay.
He was just faced with blocks at every turn.
Well, All right. So again, you're the performer.
I mean, I feel like the whole government has shifted from how it was 20 years ago, where, you know, there was so much less
I understand.
partisanship. And now it just feels like the intention is to block someone else from having a good performance, you know?
Okay. But you're the performer. You want to unblock the audience. What would you do, Margot?
I don't know. I don't know. I think when you're faced with protesters outside your play that don't want to see you perform, it's very hard to know what to do.
I mean,
What-
yeah,
what-
do
what-
you actually feel like someone would be an audience and be adverse to your having a success on stage? That's a little bit what you're asking, Jim. So,
What did Roosevelt say when all the hate and anger came direct to him? Or Johnson? He said, I know we
revel.
were. What?
I revel in
Yes,
their
bring it
animosity.
on.
Yeah.
Well, we're on cable here. We could use all kinds of. He said, you know, F you. Bring it on. I'm ready to. Now, okay. Now you're right. I mean, Obama's much more urbane. He was certainly.
He's a
just about any
gentleman.
president was more urbane than LBJ. There.
he
But
is
all
a-
right. But he would say, hey, bring it on. I'll take care of it.
To some extent, he has.
To some extent.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's not about any one person here or any one performer. I think what we're talking about is this fascinating conversation we're having about liberating oneself and communicating with people and going beyond ourselves to build a better world, which is what
To use the arts to build a
Yes.
better world.
To being open to what might be out there.
Yeah.
And to opening yourself up to experience something else, something that might
Yeah.
be beyond your comfort zone.
And you started this with the Greek tragedy. I think Obama is going to be seen in part as this really tragic figure. He could have done this. He had the country
Yeah.
pumped, and he closed up, certainly more than he needed to.
Yeah.
And we missed another chance. Okay, so, but we go on to the next play, right? To
Give
the
it
next
another,
performance.
there's another
and not give up and all
performance.
that.
There's another night.
There's another night. The show must go on, right?
There's be another opening.
Another opening, another show.
And here's Ethel
Philly,
Merman.
Boston. or
You didn't answer
Boston.
the question about Ethel Merman. You would just let Ethel. Did you like her as a singer? Who do you like as
Early
singers? Yeah, early
Ethel.
Early Ethel.
Merman.
Yeah.
It had a great, round, lovely, heady voice. It
Heady.
wasn't
What does
all
that mean, a
like
heady voice?
head voicey kind of, it's like had a high quality
So
in
when-
there.
yeah.
It's not just all speech resonance, just all pushing a belt type voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't all a call out, let's say.
Give
All
us
right.
give us 3 or 4 other names of these wonderful singers that you perhaps even had in
Mary
classes.
Martin.
Mary Martin, that you really appreciate.
Yeah,
Mary
beautiful
Martin.
voice.
Peter Pan.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Mary Martin.
Marnie Nixon.
Marnie, of course. Marnie was a wonderful singer.
She was the voice of.
Yeah, tell me.
You go ahead. And this is
No,
your area.
Who? Natalie Wood.
Natalie Wood in West Side Story.
West Side Story.
Really?
And Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady. So they just.
Now
Mouth
they had
the
nice
words?
voices, but it wasn't what they wanted in the film. So Marnie filled in. They cut her voice in
I
to those
see.
parts. So.
Okay.
But yeah, Marnie, I mean, she just passed a month
Yeah,
or two
just, yeah.
ago, but she was still singing, and she's still quite a character.
How about some of the male singers? I mean,
Brian Stokes Mitchell, we like that voice, don't we?
okay.
Wonderful, gorgeous baritone, bass baritone. And then going back, you know Robert Goulet.
I was gonna say Robert Goulet, yeah.
Mellifluous voice.
Canadian, right? Yeah. There we go. Margot's from Canada. We want the audience to know.
Good singers.
Frank Sinatra, man, I'm being.
He had a great voice and longevity. I mean, yeah, he sang.
Do you know much about his training at all? Was he just a natural, or did they?
Yeah, I think pretty much.
They just let him do his thing,
singer.
right?
Let him be Frank Sinatra.
That's
But, I mean,
someone who had a brand.
he had a brand, and he was a singer. I mean, he looked at himself as a singer. So.
What are your daughters listening to these days in terms of?
Oh man, you don't want to know.
I'm sure I don't know them, but I mean,
Well, one of them is totally in love with Justin Bieber. The only thing
Bieber.
going for him is that he's Canadian. But no, I mean,
Okay.
she adores him, and the other one, they just listen to what's, the top of the pops, as it were, And I listen to it and I go, God, this stuff is so awful, and I think of my parents saying the same thing.
Same thing.
what are you listening to these days? What kind of music do you listen? Do you listen to classical, opera, pop, everything? Right?
Well, I had one of my colleagues at the school asked what was on my iPhone. And I said, well, I'm embarrassed to tell you. It's
Justin Bieber. No.
90% jazz.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, tell us, because
Yeah.
Margot's husband, of course, who's been on the show, Stan Harrison,
Yeah.
jazz saxophonist. Jazz. Now,
Well, my dad, all his 45s were jazz, and then there was Mantovani strings and all of that stuff. So
is this something new for you?
No.
Jazz? Okay, so
always was. I remember the Take Five and Kind of Blue from Miles Davis.
Davis.
When I was in high school, listening to those, and I played drums in a jazz band. So,
Is there
followed
something
on through.
about not having vocals to this that you appreciate in your downtime?
Yeah, I think so. To a lot, yeah. I've got a lot of vocalists though, but yeah, for listening, my easy listening tracks, are all instrumental.
that's a great question. Down to how do you look? This is tense stuff you're in. How do you relax? How do you
I build a wall.
take it? You
Rock
build
wall.
a wall, right? We
rock-
know that up in
do
your
rock walls.
country house there. And
Gardening.
he's, but you're not a Donald Trump. It's not to keep anybody. It's just to keep busy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you got your wall. I know. Okay. And you listen to jazz. How about you?
I bike, I play tennis, I swim. I just like being
Physically
mostly outdoors.
Outdoors.
Yeah.
Outdoors.
And so much of my work is indoors. I like being outside as much as possible.
I think you used the word obligation, and I thought that was very interesting early on in the show.
Oh,
What do you mean by that? Do you feel a pressure, an obligation? What is your obligation
just-
to the audience, to your students?
just a part of the contract is with an audience. Is if they're going to come, then I feel
you give your best.
Yeah, I've made a
You give them what they want, what they
commitment
need.
to be open and
Yeah.
to have a commitment about what I am delivering as an actor.
Do you try to figure out
Or
what
as a
they
singer.
want to?
It
Or
has
is
to, and also it has to mean something for me. It has to mean something to me to convey.
and sing
Otherwise,
with-
it's not
sorry.
going to be valid. I mean, it just won't come across. It won't get there.
Inauthentic, I guess they call
It won't get there.
Yeah, you have to feel a connection to the material, no matter what it is.
Is it something you really have to work at, or again, is it more of a natural?
I think that if you agree to take on a part or a song or something, there's something in you that feels a connection, or that you feel that you could do this justice. You could
Even
something.
even if at some level it's really not worth your time and effort, but you'll do it anyway, just to see if you can.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of
that's
commercial
admirable.
work. I
You
do
do, yeah.
voiceover commercials,
Okay.
and I, people say, "What? I do." I enjoy the performance of it, I enjoy, you know, being able to convey this and do it, and it's paid, which is always nice. But I do enjoy the process.
Well, gosh, we are running out of time. But before we do finally run out of time, give us a commercial or two that we can sort of.
Oh,
No. I want to.
well, there's a few of them that are like, don't take Atelvia if you may be experiencing high blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh
And then
my.
I'm also the voice of Frontier Communications, which is an internet communications company, which is mostly out west and coming east. And so I'm their voice for all their
Well,
commercials.
we'll look for that as
We'll
you
look
come
for
west
that,
to
yes.
east and so on.
Right.
This has been a delight. I am really so pleased. I'm so grateful that you both came today for the show. It really added a tremendous amount to our understanding of social change, social protest. And I just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I know our audience will love it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Delighted.
so much.
Thank you.
And thank you all so very, very much for watching us again on The Radical Imagination. This is Jim Vrettos, your host. We'll see you again next week.